I'm Froskurin, LPL Shoutcaster, League of Legends analyst, and for those of you who haven't gotten any of Thorin's obvious thespian jokes, a raging homosexual. Now, this video has nothing to do with League of Legends. It does have something to do with something that's much more personal to me and much more important to me. And for those of you who don't know, October 11th is National Coming Out Day. I wanted to do a video that was my coming out story, publicly and professionally, in the League of Legends and esports community. Now, a lot of that should actually be met with why or who cares, which I love that. I love the sentiment that we're finally, 2015, we're at a point where you say I'm gay and someone's like, so the fuck does that matter? Because the country has been really progressive, especially in America, but there are still... I had the luxury where I grew up in a very liberal part of the country. I had the luxury where I was able to be out and loud and proud relatively late, or I guess early on in my life, around high school. Of course, I'll tell that story, but even though we have all this progressiveness around us, we can't get complacent, and there still is a lot of people who can't be loud or can't be safe, either financially, physically, or emotionally, with coming to terms in their public and professional setting with who they are on the inside. And that was kind of the importance of making this video, because I know that when I was closeted, it gave me a lot of comfort and a lot of solace that I could look at someone who was publicly out and say, okay, it does, it's cliche, but it does get better, that I can achieve that, I can be that happy, I can be that successful, and more importantly, that I deserved to be. So even though I have the tiniest platform, I just wanted to make a really clear, statement that I am gay, and it's totally fine to be gay. Coming out was not easy. It was, I've heard worse stories. It can be harder, but to offer encouragement, but also to remind people that there's no time limit on figuring yourself out. There's no time limit on, finding the correct label or anything like that. To always be safe, respectful, but most importantly, to always be yourself. So, my coming out story. Holy shit. I think the first, and this is funny too, because one of the most asked questions that I get either through like social media platforms is always, are you gay? Are you a lesbian? And for the 12 who haven't figured it out, look at my haircut. Yes, I've never sidestepped. I guess I have sidestepped it. I'm much more obvious about it these days. It's funny, when I actually got into esports, I was giving a lot of professional advice to not say anything about my sexuality, which I completely understood. Again, I don't think that there's a place really for your private life and kind of your professional life. Obviously, you want to keep those two separately, but again, just wanting to put myself out there as not like a beacon, but like if me coming out gives comfort to even just one person, to say, well, China's losing right now, but Froskurin's okay, and she happens to be gay, like, that would be enough. Just one. So the next question is, everyone asks, when did you know? When did you know that you were gay? For me, it was in middle school. Obviously, it changes from person to person, but for me, it was in middle school, and I'll never forget this moment. I was over at a friend's house, and my boyfriend at the time, we'd been dating for a very long time. We were mutual friends. They all lived very close together. So it was my boyfriend, me, and my best friend. Because, of course, it was the best friend. That's just a stereotype. And a true one in my case. No, I was sitting on the couch with my boyfriend, and, you're in 8th grade. It's like your boyfriend, you maybe say hi to them one extra time in the hall, and, like, you hold hands, and maybe pass, like, a note. Like, cell phones didn't exist. They existed, but no one had a freaking cell phone. Although I think everyone remembers those little flip razor phones. I was not a cool kid. I did not have one of those, but I did get one when I was a sophomore in high school. It was pink. Anyway, I was sitting next to my boyfriend at the time, and he had his arm, like the casual stretch, and they drape it across. And just the thought that there was an expectation that I was to reciprocate something romantically, physically with him, actually made me physically nauseous. I can only equate it to the feeling where you've done something wrong, and your parents know, and you get that call from your mother, and she's using that tone of voice like shit's about to go down, and you have to make that long drive or walk home, and you know that you're doomed, that it's just going to be like a slaughter. That's what it felt like, just so much anxiety. Just sitting on the couch with this guy and his arm draped across my shoulders. There was like no pressure to do anything else. It was simply just sitting next to him. And eventually I managed to, thank goodness I talk for a living now, because eventually I managed to talk for so long that dinner came and he had to go home. So I think he was trying to go in for like the move of like the first kiss, and I managed to talk my way out of it, or just stall it for like several hours. And so he goes home. My best friend at the time sits down next to me, and we were going to watch, I think it was Hercules, the Disney version. I don't know. I should have known I was gay because I wanted to watch Hercules. I mean, Megra, am I right? Anyway, she sits down next to me, and there was no like casual arm over, there wasn't anything like that. The simple caress of her arm against mine was a very different feeling than the anxiety. And it was so different that I had to get up from the couch and I ran to the bathroom to literally like splash cold water on my face because I had no idea what was happening. I was like 12, 13 years old. And I'll never forget, I was looking down at like the basin of the sink and splashing cold water on my face. And as I looked up into the mirror, and this sounds so cliche, but I could actually see that there was something different, that I was like seeing like this realization, like as everything kind of clicked into place. And I looked at my reflection, I said, this is not good. I didn't say, you know, like, oh, I'm gay, or awesome, fabulous, fantastic, and the like rainbow glitter. I literally said, this is not good, or this is unexpected. The first person that I actually told was my best friend. We never got together, the stereotype, it ended there. She's still a very good friend of mine. She took it well. I came out definitely to my circle of friends, and even at school before I ever came out to my parents. And so I consider coming out to my parents like my actual coming out story. But it's important to note that I was out at high school, kind of in the back half. I ran my school's GSA, which stands for the Gay Straight Alliance. And me and my girlfriend, we were liked. You know, I really didn't have to deal with a lot of bullying, or again, I was very lucky that I didn't have to deal with a lot of the physical abuse that some youths really go through. I mean, there were some instances and some skirmishes, but wow, I just said skirmish, and I said this wasn't going to be a League of Legends video. There wasn't ever a 5v5, maybe like a 1v1, occasionally verbally. Some double of trash talking going down. No. But I went through a really bad breakup, my first breakup. Never mind my first kiss, that was awful. But my first breakup, of course, I was just completely distressed. You're a teenager, it's the end of the world, you know, this was the love of your life, how could this happen? And everything's going wrong, and you've got a report due, and there's a test, and I gotta go to lacrosse practice, because of course I played lacrosse, because have you seen my haircut? And I remember I was just not in a good place at home, and I was sitting in my mother's office because my parents were divorced, and I was kind of going back and forth, and again, just kind of a home situation was really upset, and my school situation was really upset, and I was kind of just laying it out to my mom and trying to have like a conversation with her, and I effectively was asking for help, and I really needed a lot of emotional help at that moment. And as I'm spilling my heart to my mother, and I'm saying, you know, like, this is what went wrong at school, and this is how I feel, and I'm just really stressed out, and you know, like the tears are flooding down, and my mother, she's an accountant, she's sitting across at her desk, and she's just kind of like taking this in, she's doing work. I was on like a free period at lunch. She looks up at me and she goes, "Are you gay?" And immediately, like, it had nothing, it kind of had something, because I was talking about my breakup, but you know, we use like pronouns, and your parents know, but no one says anything. You're just like, yeah, I'm dating a person. They're really cool. Yeah. But when she looked at me and she said that, I immediately looked down. I could no longer look at my mother. Like, I had literally just like flayed my heart out and was just telling her everything. But as soon as she said the word gay, I was suddenly so ashamed. And I just immediately looked down at my feet, and all I could do was nod. I couldn't even vocally say it. And so she nods, and she goes, "Okay, do you want me to tell your dad, or do you want to do it?" And I didn't want to do it. So she took the liberty, and after I had left and gone back to the back half of my classes, that she called my father and alerted him. So I get home, because at the time I was living with my father, and he calls me up for dinner, and we sit down, and I know he knows, but no one had said anything to me yet. And so again, you have like this anxiety, and I mean, my mom, she didn't say anything other than asking me the question, and I sat down at the table, and my dad, he was very displeased with me at the time, just because of, again, some home personal issues, and kind of was ripping into me, and then it kind of goes quiet, and he looks up at me and goes, so do you want to talk about it? He didn't say, do you want to talk about your sexuality? Do you want to talk about your feelings? Do you want to talk about it? And I immediately said, no, I do not ever want to talk about it. And that's really how it was for me for a very long time. And in fact, even till this day, it wasn't until very recently that I started even just using the word gay or partner or girlfriend or I mean, I've never talked about really any of my relationships with any of my family members. I really don't talk about it with my dad. And both my parents, again, I was incredibly lucky that I would consider my parents very accepting. They've never said anything to me concerning it. You know, I didn't get thrown out of the house. I haven't had to deal with a lot of the emotional trauma that some people have gone through in terms of coming out or coming to with their identity and their family coming to with their identity. So, but it was definitely rough. I'd like to say that I love my parents dearly and I respect them dearly, but I assembled more of like a chosen family, which is why esports itself is also very important to me, and kind of why I wanted to really come out publicly to esports, especially on National Coming Out Day, because I have what I consider a chosen family. Chosen family is when you effectively take friends and you create a family. And a lot of those friends, because I've been involved with esports for a big part of my kind of coming to age or the start of my adult life, I met in esports. So it's a lot of people that I only get to see at certain international events or work with, and I really respect them, and more importantly, I do consider them my family. And so again, this is just kind of an extension of that identity that I wanted to make sure that everyone knew, and to provide comfort that it is okay. And I know that most people will just be like, you know, who cares? Why would you bring this up? No one should care about personal lives. It has no bearing on anything that you do professionally, as long as it doesn't inhibit with your career. And I totally agree with that, and I agree that the country has made so much progression, at least America has made so much progression in legalizing gay marriage, but literally just the other day, I was dealing with a very dear friend who had to go through the process of coming out to her family and how stressful it was. And I just sat there and I was like, people are still in this day dealing with these problems. And if I could offer solace or comfort to even just one person, then done my job. So I guess closing statements. Coming out sucks. Sometimes it's awesome. Majority of the time it sucks. Even when it is awesome, it's still embarrassing. Like, even if they like throw you a party and like give you a hug and everyone like high fives and glitter like comes out as your hands connect, it's still really like vulnerable, really embarrassing, but it gets so much better afterwards. But there's no timer, there's no time limit, there's no expectation. If anyone ever pressures you to come out before you're ready, it's not worth it. Always make sure that you're safe. Physically, safe emotionally, safe financially, and safe to yourself. So be safe, be bold, and be yourself.